Yo, what's poppin'? We have the APAC games of day 2, week 3, which is the second day of APAC total. We have some 3 games. Two of them were pretty bangers, 5 map series. So that was big. Pretty long too, to be honest. Like 5 hours or something total. So that 2 banger games. So the first game is not a banger game, and it is the Guangzhou Charge against the Chengdu Hunters. Guangzhou winning their game over Valiant yesterday, and Guangzhou this is being and Chengdu this being their first game. So this ends up being a 3-0 for Chengdu. Colosseo ends up being 65 to like 65. A very close match actually. And it looks like the Charge would take this for a bit. So like right down to the point 0.01 meter, basically the same spot. Guangzhou playing Develop, Choice A1, Rio, Unique, and Faraway 1987, with Chengdu playing Jinmu, Leave, Gaga, Monk, and Nisha. Charge playing Soldier, Genji, Winston, Lucio, Ana, against the same thing except Doom over Monkey for the Hunters. So starting off, Gaga was kind of at a sync on Doom. It was a little interesting to see him on it. Develop swaps over to Sombra as soon as they find out that he's on Doom. So maybe still a good counter to Doom in Overwatch 2. Uh, and the Hunters are never cleanly winning fights, so they are struggling to make any actual progress because usually Monk or Nisha are dead and they can't really push up. And Develop's never really dying, but the lack of soldier damage was kind of felt throughout this match, this map specifically. And the hacks were not making up for it because I think Gaga was already getting punished enough, but by the sleep dart and the anti, and the hack didn't really add enough overall value. Uh, so basically, Valiant were looking pretty good pretty much the whole time, and then Chengdu end up winning. Like I'd say like 2 minutes left or something. They end up winning out, like pushing it a bit. They get pushed back, and then finally uh, it hits overtime. They're like 20 meters from the checkpoint, and it's like really close. And Charge kind of dropped the spaghetti. I feel like they probably should have been in control of this match. They should have held their lead better, but they end up not doing it. And Hunters end up winning out. So that's the end of map 1. Moving on to Dorado, we have Krong coming in for Rio. Uh, right here. And on the Hunter's offense, we get Ashe, Echo, Diva, Brig, Ana from the Charge against Genji, Widow, Zarya, Ana, Brig for the Hunters. Uh, Jimu kills 2 off the rip, and he actually gets 3 off the rip. Develop swaps over to Widow, Choice 1 swaps over the Tracer, and the Charge roll over and die to Jinmu, and they don't recontest. So pretty clean for the Hunters. They enter second pretty easily. Krong on Diva is just going between the point and high ground trying to contest as much as possible, but he can't really he can't do that quickly. He's not contesting that much overall because he's against the Zarya. So if he was against something like a Monkey, it'd be easier, but against Zarya, you can't just sit there. You'll just get beamed. So the Charger is kind of sitting and waiting for Develop to hit shots, I guess, or for ults or something, because they're not really doing anything. Krong is doing a good job of dodging the sleep darts every time he goes down. He's not really DMing them; he's just using his movement to avoid them, so that's cool. And the Hunters win one fight on second, and they make it to third with like 330. So Charge playing very slow, not taking fights, maybe as much as they should, not contesting point, maybe as much as they should, because it's been like 2 real good fights, and the Hunters are just on to third point. Kronk swaps over to Zarya at the very end, but then Chengdu just ended up capping. So not a lot of fight the from the Charge, but it's like more slow, more like they were kind of stalling time, but they weren't taking fights. Moving on to the Charge offense, we get Sombra, Echo, Krong. I don't know, it's just a Sombra, Echo, Krong, Mercy, Ana, Genji, Widow, Winston, Ana, Brig. I believe this is a This is Zarya. It's supposed to be on Zar. So Krong is solo pushing the payload, and Gaga is just stopping the progress on Monkey, just sitting at the corner. Like the card doesn't even really get around the first corner for a while, and just really a lot of struggle coming up from charge. And the Sombra Echo only really coordinated a dive like once or twice onto leave, uh, and it's not really great. And pretty much only get one one ult the entire round on all their dudes, and they just lose. Like I don't even think they get it past the choke, to be honest. The Sombra is a pretty big question mark for me. I don't see any value from it, especially in this. And there was no pressure on Lee's Widow at all, really. And definitely not enough pressure to let Choice A1 do anything on Pocketed Echo. Because even if you're pocketed on Echo, you still get headshot and die. And at this point, the Hunters aren't really forcing mistakes, and they're kind of just taking what the Charge are giving to them, but they are like, they're not playing badly. They're just not, like, they're not causing the errors. They're just happening, I think. Moving on to King's Row. Quick 3-0 for Chengdu. Daisy comes in for Gaga, who is a off-tick from Team Chaser. So Chengdu's offense, we get Soldier, Genji, Zarya, Lucio, Ana mirrors. The Hunters lose first point, but Jinmu is being really annoying. I think that's fight. The Hunters lose first fight, but Jinmu is just being really annoying behind them, and they force all of charge back. And Chengdu just walks onto the point, and they end up taking like 76.1% before charge force them back. And the charge are trying to force they're trying to turn the fights over around first with ults, but the Hunters are just ulting back, and it doesn't work out in Charge's favor. And then Hunters enter second with like 345. Krong gets nailed at like 0 energy, uses both of his bubbles and gets like 7 energy, but they still win the fight off that, and I'm not sure how a Nano Zarya with no energy wins the fight, but whatever. And the Charge just kind of let Hunters walk through choke somehow, because they're trying to hold the choke, but then Hunter just straight up walk through and set up their guys, and they go up into third, and they enter third, and they end up winning. It was weird. There was like a little bit of a stand by the Charge, but it just kind of went away out of nowhere, really. So moving on to the Charge offense, we have Widow, Genji, Zarya, Lucio, Ana on both sides, except instead of Widow, we get Ashe from Hunters on the defense. Develops getting picks, but they're not winning, and the Charge really should have gotten this point somehow. They got it to like 99.97 or something. Or something crazy like that. But not even. They stopped it at 2 ticks. I don't know. It was like Develop was doing things, and Charge looked like they should be winning some fights, but the Hunters just did not do it. Like the Hunters just came back and they said, "No, we are winning this." And it's truly bizarre how the Charge did not find a way to get a win from a Grav or from a Nano Blade at all, especially with Develop getting picks. So it was weird. Anyway, the overview for this match, we have Guangzhou looked good on Coliseum to start, but then they fumbled the bag in overtime, and they never really recovered from there. That was like them fumbling the bag in overtime was like the perfect like recreation of how this series went. But after that, they just looked lost and had no idea what their game plan or their win cons really were. And I don't think it's a player skill issue, but it's just like the compositions and the game plans are not coming together. And the only hope they had was individual plays, and that didn't even lead them there, like on King's Row. So I don't know. Moving on to Chengdu, they had no glaring major weaknesses besides maybe Gaga Doomfist on Coliseum looked kind of out of sync with his dives, and it's left a little something to be desired. Especially because no other APAC team has opted to play Doomfist, and it looked spotty at best for the Hunters. But yeah, pretty shut down early, but they end up clawing their way back into that map. So I guess it works. And the hunters are just kind of doing their thing as the church are unsure what they're doing. Uh, so this is probably I feel like this is not a great uh, showing of what Chengdu can do and of what they can Chengdu even. And I'm not sure. We'll see tomorrow. I think they play tomorrow against someone. I'm not sure who. I don't remember. But they play tomorrow. We'll get to see a closer look. I guess I can look right now. They have this open. They play Seoul tomorrow. So they'll give you a closer look of what we can expect. Anyway, the automaton player of the match was Jinmu. He came out and impressed on the Genji and didn't really have any problems with the match. And I think he should be. This should at least indicate that he will be fine as a full-time roster player, at least in this stage, especially with how good Genji is. He was on Tracer a little bit, I believe. So we'll see. Maybe if they want to play Echo, that could be an issue. I don't know if he has an Echo on him. I wouldn't be surprised if he does, but I just haven't seen it. So that's that for map 1. 11 minutes. We take those. We take an 11-minute review. That's like that. That's like the goal. I want to do like a 10 to 15-minute thing. However, these are 2 game 5s, so this one might be a little longer. So the Hangzhou Spark against the Shanghai Dragons. Spark beating Seoul yesterday, and Shanghai losing to Philly in a spectacular 3-0 fashion. But Shanghai end up taking this nail-biter 3-2 in the end. So Coliseum at 92 to 84 for the Spark. Pretty close. Spark play Shy, Alpha Yi, Bernard, Irony, and Super Rich. And the Dragons play Lip, Fleta, Fate, Li Jaegon, and Izayaki to start off. We have Spark playing the Soldier Reaper Zarya Ana Lucio, and Shanghai playing the Soldier Genji Winston Lucio Ana. So we have the Winston comp versus Zarya comp. The Lip's doing a lot of damage off the bat, but the team's trade out, so no one actually is ahead after the first fight. The Lucios are helping their soldiers flank around, specifically Li Jaegon doing more to help Lip than Super Rich is for Shy. But the whole Shanghai backline ends up playing on like a kind of off angle a few times this map. But Li Jaegon has like 2 questionable fights, and he dies early 2 times in a row, and it results in the Spark winning a fight without using any ults at all, and Shanghai using like 3. And it's not a great look because it happens twice in a row, and he ends up Ajaxing later. So Li Jaegon not having a great start to the series at all. But yeah, just not a great showing overall. I don't have any, there's no but about it. Very chaotic fights with a lot of ults, and Alpha E is doing a lot. The Spark, whenever they get close to like the Shanghai kind of like high ground that they have to give up, they play up and they kind of force them. They take the initiative into their spawn and don't really let them get to the high ground. And Alpha E gets like a 3k deep in their spawn with a Blossom, and it results in Spark getting the checkpoint. And then, of course, like a visor comes out and Spark just leave, and they recontest in the little Coliseum. And Li Jaegon hits an Ajax as they go. There's a time where Fate just dies for no reason. It's kind of weird. Izayaki has the nano. I think he wants to hold the nano for Nano Blade the next fight is the plan, but yeah, it results in Fate just kind of dying. He had Primal available too. There was a lot of resources. And it's not great, and maybe it does cost them. So that's it for map 1. Oops. Moving on to map 2, Watchpoint Gibraltar, which ends up being a 3-2 victory for Shanghai, but for a long time it looked like it would be a Spark win. So Who Are You comes in for Fleta, and Gushui comes in for Bernard. Shanghai's offense, we have Winston on a Brig Genji comes, but the only difference being Spark on Ashe on the defense and Shanghai playing Widow on the offense. Who are used doing numbers in server, and he doesn't even blade anything. It's just raw Genji skill difference. So they end up winning the first point off that basically. Gushui gets ring around and proceed by Lip in Primal, which was very funny. And then Spark end up stabilizing, and Shanghai don't push their advantage because they win the fight, but it's like a scrappy fight, so both teams have people on both sides. And instead of like trying to hold their ground on the shuttle a little bit, they just back up fully, and it lets the spark like kind of reset up on the second point, and it almost ends up losing Shanghai this map because it takes them quite a while to get past second point off it. And yeah, that could have been a really bad point because if you lose this map, you lose the series, right? So every little thing like that ends up mattering a lot, and it really did hurt their momentum in their second point. There's lots of pressure getting put on the Shy in these fights, but they're never taking him out, and he's always getting value. Lip swaps over to Tracer, maybe to help kill Shy in a dive or something. Uh, like, meanwhile, Gushwei is pressuring Shanghai's backline at every opportunity, just jumping down from the shuttle, getting some zaps in, stuff like that. Shy gets dove and ends up messing up his coach gun, which so he would have been safe, but he like hits like a one of the pillars that like comes out of the wall, and he dies, and it kind of leads to Shanghai completing second in overtime, entering third with a minute 30. At this point, Lip swaps back over to Widow and Alpha U to flex Lip in the head, which was just always hyped to see a good deflect kill on a Widow. And Spark dive deep and they choose not to ult, and they save for recontest, and that's the right play because they stop Shanghai short before even the final like area where it opens up, kind of like under the second bridge on Watch Point. So it's a pretty good defense. But moving on to Spark's offense, which results in Shanghai having a better defense. We have the same compositions back and forth. Spark preferring the Ashe because Shy is known for his Ashe, and the Lip on Widow. Lip is literally holding Spark into their first spawn for like a minute and a half, and like the cart can't even get around the corner. He's just popping off. And during this time, like Gushbei is like going deep, but he's not really going on Lip as much, and he's like trying to make plays on the back line, but it's not really working out. What does end up working out for Spark is Alpha Yi goes back into the Shanghai spawn, and then a bunch of people in Shanghai fall back for him, and it gives Spark room to get past that corner and get some space on the high ground. Uh, Alpha Yi ends up dying, of course, but he comes back hitting Nano Blades, and he does this really good play because Lip puts out walls, and he's going around a corner to attack the backline, but right before he goes around the corner, he backs up to avoid the sleep dart because he knows that they have walls, so they're going to see him turn, but he just like does a nice little stutter step and dodges it and gets a lot of kills off it, and he ends up going getting Sparks into second with like 3 minutes, and they almost make it to the very end of like right off there, but bringing that momentum. But Rally and Who Are You end up stopping them. Alpha Yi dies with Gushwei with Blade, and they end up getting it to third with 2 minutes. And Alpha Yi gets another deflect kill on Lip, so that's 2 in 1 map, which is cool. But something that is consistently happening for the Spark at this point is Irony is nanoing on lost fights. Like often, like it happened like 2 nanos in a row or something. And it probably ends up costing them. It was an impactful decision that contributed to them losing this map. Because Who Are You ends up getting a blade, and Spark end up kind of C9ing because I believe Gushwei might have had Primal available, but they just don't touch the point. So some questionable decisions coming out there. But yeah, let's say they had a nano for that last fight, and suddenly you just nano Who Are You was trying to dive, and you maybe win out that fight. But it was very close, and both teams looked pretty good. They both had things they could improve on, but they look good. They both look good. So yeah. All right, moving on to Eichenwald, we have Bernard coming in for Gushwei. And I was eating a fantastic ham Benedict thing that I ordered, so I didn't end up writing anything down for the Spark offense at all, but that's fine. So Shanghai's offense, they're running Soldier, Genji, Winston, Lucio, Ana against Ashe, Echo, Zarya, Ana, Mercy. And it looks like they're going to lose pretty much the whole time until the very end, where Lip gets nanoed and he gets a 3k raw, pretty much. No visor. And that ends up bringing Shanghai through first in the second in overtime. And then coming off the overtime, it's another great individual play, great individual decision from Fate. So Shy ends up coming and killing like four right off the high ground, and Fate is just pushing cards the whole time, and he ends up getting into like the start of the bridge around the around the corner, up the way, back up onto the bridge kind of thing, and that basically sets up the idea that next fight he just pulls up and he primals and he does insane work with it, and it brings Shanghai to the third point where they fall down short uh, a little bit around the corner or something. Yeah, but it doesn't matter too much because they end up holding Spark on second. So basically, two insane individual performances win this out for Shanghai. First being Lip getting nanoed and getting three people, and then the second one is Fate basically cutting his losses on the fight that they thought was lost, pushing it super far, and then being able to come through and put them into one fight territory on that map, on that point. For Spark's offense, the offense was pretty good. The first point was pretty good. So you have Spark playing Ashe, Echo, Diva, Ana, Mercy, and Shanghai playing Soldier, Genzu, Winston, Lucio, Ana. The Diva pick is a little unconventional, but on the first point it does big work because they end up diving onto Izayaki, and the nade gets eaten, and the dive comes out, and Echo just cleans up, and they end up winning the first point off of that. So it was it worked very well on the first point, but on the second point, it struggles pretty heavily. Uh, and eventually he ends up swapping over to Zarya, but it's a little too late because he can't build a grav or anything. And basically the whole from what I remember, that whole offense was Spark trying to like get a foothold on the high ground and make a way, like try and make space for the Ashe and the Echo. And there's probably some swaps. I don't think Shy was on Ashe the whole time. Probably. I think there was some Genji there. Maybe no, maybe not. But without Zarya, you don't have that ult that can help you win a fight proper. And Diva also couldn't like get them a good foothold onto the high ground. So I like the Diva on the first. Like it did well, but they struggled with it on the second offense, and it ends up costing them this map, maybe as they get stopped on second. So that's about it for that map. Moving on to Lijiang Tower. We have a 2-1 victory for Spark here. No swaps, but on Gardens, we have the Diva come back, and Spark plays Soldier, Far Red, Diva, Ana, Mercy, and Shanghai plays Soldier, Genji, Winston, Lucio, Ana. Shanghai take the first cap as Alpha Yi is getting damage done, and he's getting close to Mirage, but he's not getting enough damage on the same target to finish them off, or for a Shy to finish them off or anything. Next fight, he goes for Barrage, but he gets slipped and dies. And Spark end up using Nano to flip the point at some point, but it's like 71% for Shanghai. Alpha Yi does this play where he goes out. Let's say you are looking at the enemy spawn. He goes. Oh. Let's say that the white room is on the left. On that left side, that's where the Pharah goes, and he's like flying around their spawn deep on the left side, like over the edge of the map, and managing his fuel like that. So he's playing in a really cool spot there, and Shanghai try to path under him through white room, but Alpha Yi just shoots them and kills them because you can't path directly under a Pharah and expect to be okay and not look at them. So that's basically forcing Shanghai to path over to the bridge, which they will start to do. But to do that, Lip ends up pressuring Alpha Yi enough that Shanghai gets through, and Huryu gets a blade on the back line and stuff, and they end up flipping. And then Alpha Yi doesn't die to Lip, but Lip doesn't die either. And eventually, Alpha Yi hits a barrage at the very end and gets rezzed and dies. But it wasn't really worth it in the end. And maybe Alpha Yi was better off just getting out of there or saving the barrage and dying or something. Because I don't think you're gonna win off that barrage regardless. But it was very good to see, and it was very interesting. I definitely see that being a strategy that can work for teams. Like maybe they do some tweaks to it. I don't know if you want to stage dives earlier, then maybe you want to dive in front of the bridge as opposed to on it or something. I'm not sure what you want to do with that, but I did see some big potential to get some cool picks for that. Moving on to night market, we get Spark on Soldier Reaper Zarya on Lucio, and Shanghai playing the Genji Winston Soldier comp. Spark take the first cap, but Lip gets shy, and then the Spark ends up losing from there, and there's only like 9% on the point or something. And then the next fight, Shy pulls up, gets a lot of kills, and they flip back. And that kind of stuff works like it'd be a Shanghai cap, Spark come back, and they cap, and then Shanghai would come back, and Lip would do a lot, and then it's very back and forth um, until Spark got control of the point, which was had like 70% for Shanghai and 50% for Spark. Alpha Yi ends up soloing Fate as he's on the high ground and he's split from everyone. So Fate just like jumps into the room to try and get away, but he doesn't go far enough. And then it takes like a full mag, but Alpha Yi like kills him, and that's a whole fight wash. It was very odd to watch. Uh, and then last fight overtime for Shanghai, Lip gets like 3, but he ends up dying to Alpha Yi. And then Alpha Yi pulls it up and gets a huge blossom and ends up winning the fight for Shanghai, not Shanghai, for Spark. And end up winning the round. Then we move on to Control Center. And this one was a bit weird, where we see Spark running Reaper Genji Zarya. We see Shanghai running the Rhine like Mei Soldier. They're running the London Spitfire comp. And Shanghai get the first cap, but Spark like pull up and Shy gets like 4. So maybe not successful. Who are you swaps over to Genji and Fate swaps over to Winston, and then Shanghai take a fight, and then Liv decides I'm gonna go Reaper. So the Rhine wasn't as successful as they wanted. Definitely not. But yeah. So Spark looked pretty dominant overall in this round. Shy's killing a lot every fight, and there's pretty good like alt understanding. So they're like, oh, we're gonna blade here, but we're not going to try and kill with it. So he just like he makes sure he can't die, and then they allows them to grab Blossom, not together but like separately to get big value and end up winning the round and the map. And this puts us to map 5, where we've gone Spark, Shanghai, Shanghai, Spark. So Spark has the momentum right now, especially after that, but Shanghai decides to make some swaps as Fleta comes back in for Who Are You, and Void comes in for Fate. For the first time in the series, we see Void. So we get the mirror of the Soldier Reaper Zarya on a Lucio mirror. And we saw Shanghai on this comp yesterday, and we saw Spark on this comp yesterday. And Shanghai looked very shaky on it, but they were into a monkey. And Spark looked very good on this, and they were into the mirror. However, that's not how it ends up. And Shanghai ends up winning this map 100 to 55 in meters. I don't even think 55 isn't even at the checkpoint yet. They're like, it's like right before the checkpoint. So if you count a checkpoint as a point, which maybe we should start doing that, and then we can call it like 2-0 or 1-0, and it'd make more sense. I like that. So then if you'd win and both teams got past the checkpoint, it'd be a 2-1 win. Sounds good to me. But anyway, Fleta does a little trolling on the first fight, and he goes too deep, and Alpha Yi kills him. So Spark get the first little push, but it doesn't mean anything because Lip comes through and kills a lot of them, and Shanghai get the push and take the lead. Shanghai fighting in like a little room off to the right, and as a lot of alts go, it ends up resulting in a Nano Fleta, and Shanghai ends up getting a checkpoint from it. Because you're fighting a Nano Reaper in a little room, and you've just used a bunch of your alts. And Shanghai are looking pretty dominant at this point. as they got the early lead, and they're forcing the Spark to play from behind basically the whole map, and they get to control the engagements. And it's just a standard push story, only it's the Shanghai Dragons, and they're looking good. So it's even scarier. Uh, from this point, it just Spark trying to come back, claw their way back in, but they're never quite getting that much push if they get any. And overall, I feel like they're not targeting Void enough with the same like ferocity as they did when they targeted Smurf. Yesterday we saw Alpha Yi like hard int on the Smurf all the time. Like he was trading as much as he could. He was constantly targeting him. It felt like Void was much more free, and I'm not sure if that's because they understood how to prevent the Zarya from being as pressured. Maybe there was some good speed boosts involved. Maybe good bubble management. I'm not entirely sure why, but Alpha Yi was not pressuring, was not getting the same pressure on Void as he was getting, and I kind of don't think he was. I didn't feel like he was inting on him as hard as he was inting on Smurf, right? Eventually, Alpha Yi goes Tracer, and at that point, I was like, it's kind of a wash. If you're switching Tracer into this composition, you're literally just playing to solo kill the backline basically, and I think it's like a very panic move, and at that point it's kind of a wrap, and Shanghai win for sure. So overview here, very close match for both of these teams, and they both look great at different points in the series, but they also had some less than great moments. I would say, looking at this, uh, Spark definitely had opportunities to close out, like Watch Point Gibraltar. Maybe you're like, oh, what the hell? Introducing watermarks. Uh, maybe you should win this map out of your Furious Spark. Definitely was a possibility here. Was definitely a possibility here, as Shanghai barely made it to first or second. And very close. So like either of these games could have went both ways. You could say the same thing for maybe maybe you can say the same thing for this. Maybe if Li Zhegan doesn't get this Ajax, then Shanghai win. Maybe if Izayaki doesn't just let Fade die, they win. But very close. Very good match. Very entertaining. I don't think it was the best Overwatch we've seen played this season so far, but the match is very close, and it'd be very good to see how these two teams develop and to see if Shanghai reaches their original form, because they're not there yet. There's still some like if Shanghai has the individual skill to make these plays to win their fights off it, but they don't rely on it. At least in last season, this series they kind of relied on it to win them points and to win the maps, and that's not the Shanghai we know. We know the very technically sound, very like robotic almost uh, machinery of Shanghai, and we didn't really get that. But Spark came out swinging, and Shanghai looked like uh, they looked kind of slouched, and the momentum was in Spark's favor until Shanghai's defense on that Watch Point Gibraltar, and it starts with Lip just keeping them in their spawn for a minute and a half, basically, and at that point, let's kind of see kind of a shift in the series, and you start to see Lip show up. You start to see Fate play really well, and yeah, there was a point on Watch Point where it looked possible they would lose on their offense for sure, but on that defense, it kind of turned around. And it looked like they would lose on the Eichenwald as well, but Lip again comes in, pops off, and gets a big thing. Helps them in, Faye helps them in, the individual plays, the individual skill. The Diva comp from Spark not helping them on their offense, on B especially. And it had more interesting takes with the Pharah Diva, which I like. I like the Pharah Diva. I think there's some real potential. But yeah, overall, Shanghai looked like the better team, basically. When it mattered on New Queen Street. The absolute most dominant showing in this entire match was on New Queen Street. where Spark were playing from behind the whole time. Fleta pulled up for map 5. Not Spark didn't really have a chance at that point. It felt like it did not feel like they could win that map. It didn't feel like it after the third fight, I would say. Felt like it was done. So the automaton player of the match was Lip. Consistently won the fights out of nowhere. Eichenwald switched the momentum in their favor on Gibraltar. And he ended up differing Shy overall in this match. Shy had a really good match in his own right, but Lip played much better, I think. And definitely had the key plays that brought Shanghai to victory overall. So that's it for that map. And now we are moving on to. Let's change that to 3-2. That was my pred. No, my pred was 3-1 actually. Now we're moving on to the Valiant, which is I am wearing my Valiant hat because I thought they played well. And I also only have 3 teams' hats, and I wasn't going to wear a Spark or a Shanghai hat. So I'm wearing a Valiant hat. Valiant, of course, losing to Charge yesterday, and Soul losing to Spark. Coliseum starts out, and Valiant ended up winning this. Valiant playing Dia, Becky, Sassen, Lengisa, and Coldest, and Soul playing Prophet, Fitz, Smurf, Creative, Vindame. We see the mirror comps, except we see Soul come out with Sombra, Fitz Sombra, which maybe not the one. Prophet, I believe Prophet hits a big flank off the jump, not Fitz. And Valiant end up rolling over and die. Oh, maybe it is. Wait, what is it? I talk about a Fitz visor. Maybe he swaps to. I don't remember. I don't remember, to be honest, but I remember he was on Sombra for a solid portion of this map, and it did not look great. It did not inspire, and he probably switched off it because it did not inspire. So anyway, there's a big flank from whoever the Soul Soldier player is at this point at the start, and Valiant ended up rolling over and dying pretty early. But they come back and they end up pushing forward, and there's not a lot of pressure being applied to Sassen throughout this map. And every time Soul ults and Valiant ended up taking control and getting to the checkpoint basically. And every time Soul ults, Valiant run into like this little room, like under the bridge, or there's one like by the bridge too. And they like kind of wait out there. Instead of backing all the way, they only back all the way when they absolutely have to, like whenever a visor comes out or something like that. That's the only time where they're fully back up. But if they can manage not leaving all the way, they will like try to hole up and try and like weather the storm, right? And they didn't make the checkpoint at that point, but what happens is they see they're losing the fight, but they end up getting the checkpoint. They end up getting the checkpoint, which is huge. And Soul are now looking to push back the bot from one checkpoint to the other in overtime and gain like 20 meters of push, which is not an easy task. And it's a very back and forth fight, and Soul end up winning, but they lose guys. They haven't returned yet, and Valiant kind of pull up early before all Soul's guys are back, and they end up winning the fight. So, pretty good stuff, basically. Very good seeing Valiant fight back. Take a map off Soul at all is good, and it took 2. So, moving on to Circuit Royale, I didn't see most of this, so I can't really talk about it, but we got to see third point, so I'm sure it was very cool. Apparently, Becky did not have a great map, and Soul ended up winning. We run to King's Row, and this was pretty dominant for Valiant. Stalker comes in for Fitz. Valiant play Soldier, Reaper, Zarya, Brigana on their offense against Soldier, Tracer, Winston, Ana, Lucio. Dia gets picks on Prophet and Soul kite back, and they end up waiting. And then Dia kills another 5, and they enter second with 420 or 410 rather. So Dia, pretty much the Dia show on the first point. Nothing unusual for Valiant, right? Becky swaps over to Echo from Reaper after a few failed pushes on second, but he does eventually go back to Reaper after some more failed pushes. And on the last fight, and like it's like overtime, and Soul are on the last corner, but they play it so slowly. Stalker has a pulse bomb and he's on the high ground and he's like looking for like the perfect stick, like the guaranteed stick, and he never finds it. And Dia just hits a flank on the like through the alleyway on the left and ends up winning and helping them enter third with 130. Uh, so Soul playing way too slow. I don't know what the goal was, but they played so slow that Dia didn't even like initially flank. Like it wasn't like an insta flank. It was they're fighting, they're doing stuff, and Dia's like, I'm gonna go hit the flank. Like it was that long. So not great stuff coming out from Valiant or come from Soul rather on that point. And Valiant end up pushing forward with their ults that they have now. So there's a grab, there's some blossoming, there's some stuff like that, rallying even, and they end up finishing the map with 8.6 seconds, which is huge. But Soul on their offense played Doomfist, and Smurf Doomfist does not look good at all, and he should just be playing Monkey. And Stalker's not doing anything either. And Prophet's trying to take high ground, but he ends up just running into the spawn and dying. And it's just dysfunction, discoordination. Becky swaps over to Sombra in the last fight for fun, I guess. Smurf gets insta slept out of a meteor strike, and Valiant just full hold them. It was the worst gameplay we've seen from Soul yet. I don't know what was going on, but maybe don't put Smurf on Doomfist, especially on not a push map. Moving on to Lijiang Tower, we have the 2-0 for Soul. Fitz comes back in for Stalker after Stalker had a not so great performance. Control Center, we have Reaper, Genji, Zarya, Lucio, Ana against Mei, Soldier, Ryan, Bap, Lucio. Dia and Becky are doing big work, and they give Valiant the first cap. Prophet swaps over to Reaper, Smurf swaps with Zarya, and Kratos swaps to Ana right off the rip. They say we ain't doing this London Spitfire composition. We saw 2 London Spitfire comps now on this point, so but they both lost and they both swapped off immediately. So take that as equal London Spitfire. But Coldest goes down early, and Valiant ended up giving the flip. Instead of fighting for the percentage, they actually just back up and take a fight quickly. But that kind of works against them because Soul get a team wipe from grabbing and beating. So they didn't play for percentage, and they lost the next fight, and they used ults in that fight. So maybe not the play. And Dia, this is a time where Dia ends up solo capping. It's like he's alone, it's only like dude alive on the point. I don't know how that even happened. But yeah, he meets Prophet on a flank, and they both ult, and they both hit the Beyblade. But unfortunately, yeah, Prophet is Storm Pegasus, and Dia is the only one I can think of is Rock Leone. So he is Rock Leone, and Storm Pegasus won, bro. So yeah, Prophet won, and Soul take round 1. Moving on to Gardens, this was an awful showing for Valiant. Also on the Doomfist, playing Soldier, Echo, Doom, Mercy, Ana against Mei, Soldier, Ryan, Ana, Lucio, back on the London bullshit. But so we'll take the first cap, and Sesson is not doing anything on Doomfist. Murph is not doing all either. He gets like 1 shatter, but that's all he needed. And the Val are struggling to find any dives into them. Like, what are you diving? You're diving Ana, but you're diving onto a Mei and a Ryan and Soldier, and there's just like no actual coordinated dives come out, and Valiant lose this map pretty easily. Just awful, honestly. So, New Queen Street, last map of the day for APAC. Edson comes in for Becky, who hasn't been seen at all, so it's a little curious that you're bringing someone for the first time. Map 5, kind of a high pressure situation for your first map in Overwatch League. But they do it, and it does not work out at all. And he runs out on Cassidy. So I don't know why they decided to play Soldier Cassidy. I do not see the vision. They didn't play it any differently. The only difference between their comps is Reaper and Cassidy, and they did, and Valiant didn't play it at all different. It's like they had a Reaper. They ran at them the same way. They lost the fight, and he immediately swapped to Reaper. But at that point, you're playing from behind now into Soul. Smurf gets nanoed. Soul take the checkpoint after at 6 minutes after 2 fights. It was just I don't know what No Hill's cooking up. No Hill cooked something up, but he burnt it, bro. That ain't right. The Cassidy is not the one. and Seoul is looking dominant at this point. They're just taking this momentum. They lose a few fights, but they basically push it right up to the spawn door, as close as you can get without capping almost. And Valiant gets some push going, but there's no way you get it from one side of the map to the other in an overtime, bro. It just don't happen, and they lose. So no hill. Maybe he switched his notes up, bro. Maybe that was a comp for the next stage. I don't know what's going on, but that was not the one. That ain't the one. But so you win some, you lose some. He thought he had the Coliseo strat. Beautiful, perfect. New Queen Street. Just gotta go back to the lab, bro. So the overview for this map. Valiant looked much better than they did yesterday. But in the end, they seem to have real game plans and they know what to do. Even though they lose, they're still great. It was evident on Coliseo. No other team has done that sort of like try and weather the storm instead of kiting all the way back sort of thing. So no hill season is in full throttle. That was great innovation, and we'll see if other teams pick that up or how Valiant continue to do with it. Becky looked much better, but I'd still say he's not up to par. He had some pop off moments, but so does every DPS player ever. But D is still the GOAT. And maybe we don't play Saucin on Doom at all. Maybe it doesn't happen. And maybe we don't play Cassidy like a Reaper, especially with no stun. So for Soul, though, Soul had some extremely troll moments when they played Smurf on Doom. And that looked awful. And I think they struggled to figure out how to deal with the Valiant strats in Coliseo without blowing a ton of vaults. And even then, that doesn't work because they don't win fights off it. They just get kited. Maybe I should have explained better. The room they're in is the one that like connects like under the bridge, and it kind of connects out, so you can just leave. Or they do the one to the left. There's two options, but that was the most common one. Crit was playing great. Fitz was playing great. Prophet was a little inconsistent, but he still showed up when it mattered, and he was playing good. I'm not sold on Vindame. He has some missed timings, and I think his positioning was a little off at times, but I'd say he probably played better than yesterday. But he is against the worst team, I would say, probably, so it's hard to judge. Anyway, the Automaton player of the match goes to Fitz, who consistently played great for Soul, and Soul looked awful the map that he wasn't there. He's been so good all the time. Every time he's in, he's popping off, getting good moments. Him popping off helps Prophet pop off. And overall, he diffed Dia, who was playing very well in his own right, but Fitz to play better. So I gave it to like 2 hit scans. Who was my first player of the match? Jinmu. Okay. So I gave it the 2 hit scans today. It's not that bad. But that's it for me. I'll do another one. I like this style more. It's a little less time, and I think the information I'm giving is better. This one's probably more time than it would be because there was 2 map 5 series, which doesn't happen all the time. So this one, I don't know, what's 50 minutes or something? Whatever happens. So yeah, have a good one. That's it for me. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, share it. Let the people you know. If someone says, "Yo, what happened in APAC?" Boom, Tomathan got you covered. Hit them up. So yeah, that's it for me. Have a good one, and deuces.